Welcome, golf fans, pursuers of knowledge and the almighty dollar. This is your golf guru bringing you the Open Championship Preview Show. First off, thanks for stopping by. I'm going to go ahead and break down the course for you. We're going to look at some modeling. We're going to look at some past U.S. Open stuff. I'm going to talk very briefly about the John Deere Classic that is actually going on right now. I'm actually recording this show on Sunday. I'm actually going to be heading out of town for a couple days to play some golf myself. But I'll be back Tuesday night to make sure I get you guys my picks and also the Before the Lock show. Okay, with that said, I was going to put everybody in the random generator and announce the winners today, but due to circumstances, I'm going to actually take care of that and also give you guys a little more time. If you're new and you didn't actually get to get in the giveaway, I'm giving you a couple extra days to get into it. And so real simply, what is this? I'm picking 5 people randomly to win a $100 entry fee into the Millie Maker, which is ton better odds than getting in a $10 entry. And all you need to do, simply because you stopped here, is click the like button. And if you like this show and like what I'm doing, hit the subscribe button. You'll get notified of all the upcoming events. And then all you need to do also in the YouTube comments is just give me the pick on who you think is going to win the Open. And I'll put you in the random generator. And hopefully, you never know, might get spit out. Right now, I've been getting a lot of feedback, but still, I think, maybe about 7,500 people have entered, so you've got a really good chance of winning. And I will announce them on Wednesday, my Before the Lock show on July 14th now. But I will put the show out early and will notify you guys ASAP so you can, have a chance to, of course, put that money into this or whatever you want. All right, with that said, we are flying across the pond and we are heading over to Sandwich, Kent, England, United Kingdom. Of course, this is going to be played at the Royal St. George's Golf Club. It was supposed to be played there in 2020, but due to the pandemic, of course, we did not get to have an Open last year. So it's kind of exciting. One of my more favorite tournaments. And this will actually be the 15th time they've held the Open there. Out of all the United Kingdom courses or all the courses over in Europe, this one has actually held the Open the most of all of them. And of course, I'm sure a lot of you have heard this or have already seen or remember when Darren Clark actually won the last time it was held at Royal St. George's. He was a long shot. I think he was ranked at 111th, it said. And actually, it was him and DJ. And I think DJ put one out of bounds, if I remember correctly, which kind of threw him out of the tournament. If you see, you get to watch it. It was actually on the Golf Channel. I got to watch a bit of it. It's amazing. I think the funniest part of it is just how young Dustin Johnson looks back then. But, of course, he went on to win the Open, I think, by like 4 or 5 strokes, actually, when it was said and done. Of course, the architect was a Dr. Laidlaw Purvis. I mean, this was back, I think, in the 1800s. There was a couple other people that put their hands on it since. But long story short, that's a little background on the course. It is a par 70. It is almost 7,200 yards, coming in at 7,189. And I looked high and low and everywhere I could to find out where, what we're looking at from a surface for the greens and for the rough. And everything that I could find, it looks like it's going to be bent fairways, rye, and then that high fescue, of course, on the rough. And then the greens look like bent grass. Now, if somebody else somewhere has information that I am incorrect, please let me know. But every place they played before, it's been bent when you get over into the Open. And just, we have not the usual kind of information and data. So a lot of my stuff I get from right from, the actual superintendent's fact sheets. And because it's over there, we just don't have it. We also don't have the insights on the stroke gain data. But we've got some things that we can look at to help us kind of figure out which way we're going to lean. The player field's 156. I think they've got 155 figured out. And then, of course, from the John Deere Classic, whoever ends up at least top 5 and isn't already exempt to get in, we'll get into the tournament. That'll give us the 156. And like we saw at the U.S. Open, it will be 70 in ties. So a few more spots that guys can make the cut. So a little bit of chance, almost a 50% chance that whoever you pick could make the cut. If you track back about 4 or 5 years, historical cut line somewhere falls between +3 to 1 under. And then, of course, the winning score at all is going to come down to the weather, what happens there. And we'll talk a little bit about the weather because I think it's pertinent, at least at this point, as you start to think about who you want to roster, because there is going to be some crazy winds, it looks like, on Saturday, Sunday. But the score can go anywhere from 3 under with Phil, who I believe that was at Muirfield way back, I don't know, like 2012, 13. But then you had Henrik Stenson, who won at Royal Troon and shot 20 under. So it just shows you the variance. If you're asking me, especially from a betting perspective, where the number will fall, I would shoot somewhere around probably 9 to 10 under is where I think, but it's going to all come down to wind. So it's a little tough to predict that. Of course, just some side notes. Back when this was held in 2011, Luke Donald was actually number 1 in the world. And I think Westwood might have been number 1 or number 2 at the same time. So going into this tournament, those guys were heavily looked at. But of course, you had Rory, who just blew away the field at the U.S. Open at Congressional, winning by 8 strokes. So he was actually, I think, the favored. But the other guys that were being looked at was Westwood and Luke Donald, just because of how well they've been playing at that time. So that kind of takes you back a little bit. Of course, course defense, as I mentioned, this course is directly located off the North Sea, and there's going to be wind. There is a ton of those pot sand bunkers strategically placed to, if you get in, you're in big trouble. You got the tall fescue, no flat lies, a lot of undulation and mounds and hills on the greens and in the fairways. And of course, you have sand dunes. Then my last little side note is Greg Norman. When he played here back, I believe, in 1993, he's the only one to have recorded a winning total lower than 5 under par. He posted a stunning 13 under, so a 267 aggregate, and that remained the course score championship for 23 years. So that gives you a little idea. If typically it was somewhere around 5 under par, he shot 13 under. Again, I think these guys are a little better, but again, it's going to be win predicting. I would say somewhere between 8 to 10 under is where I would peg this to end up. Okay, but if it's nice weather, these guys could go and could tear this course up. I not tear it up, but it could go low. And as I always do, kind of give you guys an understanding of what are we looking at. Of course, as I mentioned, the North Sea is right here. Here's the course. I mean, really all this map is going to show you is, it's pretty right in front of you. I mean, there's some, dog legs, but, you can see the wind. But this really to the right gives you a better understanding. If you're not hitting fairways and greens, you're going to find some interesting lies, and you can see all the mounding I was talking about, the elevated greens, the pot bunkers that you have to get out of this one. If you go long, you're in big trouble. But just gives you a good understanding of what they're going to be dealing with. And I understand it's one of the toughest courses they play in the UK. So again, that gives you an idea of if you're trying to figure out where this score is going to end. So I'd say single digits, but I'm shooting for more like 8 under, 9 under. I don't have my typical scorecard information, so I usually leverage Fantasy National for a lot of stuff. Fantasy National and even Data Golf, anywhere you go to get information is going to be pretty light. And but this is a scorecard pulled off actually the Open website, and you can just see we're going to have some longer par 4s, some longer par 3s. You got a 491, and I don't have a handicap rating on these. You got a 566. So only got 2 par 5s. It's a par 35 on both sides. But it's a test of golf. I mean, nothing's going to be easy here. Another long par 3, a little shorter par 3. But, you got a shorter par 5 here, 547. But again, it's just going to be, even though it looks shorter, as you guys know, if the wind's blowing, it isn't going to matter. So with everything that I could figure out, how I see the rankings for this and how you win the Open and whatever Open it is, I think they're all set up by the RNA, just like the USGA sets up the US Open, the British Open, what we used to call it. It sets up pretty similar. And so typically where the guys that I've seen have done very well, I think you got to work the green back. It's not about, especially on this course, it's not who's pounding the ball 340 yards. I think it's going to be putting first. It's going to be the guys that are really creative and good out of sand and around the greens. I would put approach. You could put approach or ball striking either way. You could flip them. It doesn't matter. Guys that hit fairways, again, I don't think you have to be super long. The guys that can hit the knockdown, drivers or the stingers, tee it low, keep it under the wind. The guys that are custom. So, I mean, I'll tell you right off the bat, I'm going to be keeping probably a strong eye on rostering guys that are from Australia, that played in Texas, born and raised, or of course in Europe. And have shown that they can handle this kind of course. Of course, scrambling is going to be a little key, and it's all really going to come down. So if the course is wet, I don't think you're going to have the typical runouts that we've seen in the past at the Opens, as in, you hit the fairway, but the thing just keeps going and it's into the fescue. So, but they're still going to be able to scramble. They're going to be able to handle these, kind of longer, tougher par 3, par 4s. I still think prox to the pin, again, it's going to come down to if it's wet or not, but, you know, it's not super long, but it's just going to be how it plays. So if it dries out, right, you're going to get a ton of rolls. So if a guy typically hits a 10, about 280, he's probably going to be in at about 320, 330 if we get the typical open, firm fairways and it's not soggy. If it's soggy, this is going to kind of switch where the proximity of the pin comes in. And I don't have anything showing me that over, the last 20 tournaments here, because it hasn't happened, what is the typical proximity of the pin. And it would be different anyways due, again, to the weather. But this is what I'm taking from what I see at the scorecard. These are the areas that I'm going to focus on. And then last but not least, you are going to have to make hay on the par 5s. One could be eagleable at 547. And then, of course, at least minimum birdie on the front 9. All right, with that said, just to give us some ideas, and again, typically this is where I'd pull up, the stroke gain data. Now, funny enough, I got a little bit on Lowry. It showed me, it didn't show putting, but it showed, and I can, maybe pop over and show you that, but that was it. He was the only one I could get any stroke data off. But of course, you had Lowry, who is the champion golfer of the year still. Got to keep the trophy a couple years, which is a little unique, but have to give it back here shortly. And of course, he won in Royal Portrush. And just a little side note, the best I've ever done on DFS in a major was the year that Shane Lowry won. And the reason why I did really well was that, of course, I was all over him. And why I was all over him was I found out some information, which, wasn't, I don't think, super secret, but that he played and won a U.S. amateur event at that course. And, of course, he was local. But, his form, nothing. I think he missed a cut like 4 or 5 years at the Open. So there wasn't a lot point, but I just went with that. I think it was him and Westwood I just loaded up on. And I didn't win, of course, the millions, but I cashed in 5 figures. So that was nice. So hoping that's the last, of course, Open. I did really well. Hoping this is going to be the same. But again, he did it by, keeping the ball in play, hit it really good approach shots, but the putter was just super hot and his game around the green was great. Of course, Molinari, you already know, usually was very accurate off the tee, but not long. An amazing approach player. He's shown some form off and on recently, but also was a really good putter at that time. His putting's kind of been back and forth on that, but long story short, another thing that kind of showed me that I was on the right track. Of course, we know Spieth, never long off the tee, but very creative with the irons. Great short game, good putter, and when he gets hot in Fuego, and then even Henrik Stenson, hitting that 3-wood, hitting it low, and of course, elite iron player, and at this time was an amazing putter. So that just gives you some ideas of, typically I'd show the actual stroke game, but this is what I know about the players, and this is what I remember seeing, at least for sure at Lowry. I don't recall exactly every round of these, but I know enough of these guys that is what we're going to be looking for. But with that said, we can look at recent form. And so I create a model, as I always do. And the model that I created, kind of going off what I just showed you from a skill ranking. Of course, putting is rated at 15%, around the green at 15, approach at 15. So those are my 3 heavy hitters. I got my sand saves, fairways gained at 10. So instead of going off the tee or driving distance and then clicking fairways, I'm not worried about distance. I'm really just concerned about who's keeping the ball in the fairway. Of course, scrambling, par 3 efficiency, par 4 efficiency, the 2 proximity to the pins that I still think I got to go with. I mean, the first 2 days right now it's stating that the weather should be fine. It's Saturday, Sunday where the weather looks like it's going to get bad. And of course, I'm recording us on some Sunday. So there's a lot of time that this can change. So maybe things do change for me. But right now I got to go with what I know. And then last but not least, ball striking at 10%. You put that in over the last 12 rounds, no filters on. And the first guy that pops up, Harris English, which, that's not super shocking. Of course, Brian Harmon, who was one of my picks at the John Deere Classic and just didn't do anything well. He wasn't hitting his irons well, wasn't hitting his driver that well. So he missed a cut. You got Cantlay coming in on pretty good form. Of course, won at Murfield, but, I kind of, why you hear the hesitation is I still feel like, of course, that was Rahm's turn to win. And then you had the Morikawa, Cantlay, kind of runner-up, win, prize, whatever you want to call it. Of course, Louis is doing well here. It's a different price tag that we're looking at for Louis. Scheffler, who had a really good Friday at the Scottish Open, which I played a little bit of, not a ton. But I don't know, actually, to be honest, where he is at and ending up. But he had I think he shot like even or one over the first day, but then shot 8 under the next day. And I had him in one of my showdown teams, but that's neither here or there. Sun GM, not someone I'll be interested in. And I'm not going to go through all these guys. I was just seeing if there's anybody else that sticks out. Of course, you got Shane Lowry down here. You got Jason Day has shown some recent form. Xander Schauffele doing pretty good also at the Scottish Open. Russ Henley doing well at the John Deere. And I think that's about it. Of course, Kisner's starting to show a little more life. And then so because we can't do a pure, history at this course or even really comparable, the closest thing I think I can get you guys to is we look at the last 4 Opens, the Open Championships. Of course, it was played where Shane Lowry won at Royal Portrush, Carnoustie, where funny enough, that is where Molinari won. And you're going to see what you're looking at here is the stroke gain total information. And that's all we got is a total stroke gain against the field. And I just thought it was very interesting that Molinari came up 1.9. Xander Schauffele. Now Xander ended up in a T2, I think with Kisner and Rose maybe. So but it's just really weird because you'll see Shane won that. Jordan Spieth, of course, won the Royal Birkdale, and Henrik Stenson won at Royal Troon. And so that's just the only interesting point I was going to point out is all those guys led in stroke gain against the field. And Henrik Stenson, I don't know what Phil shot, but he shot, as I mentioned, 20 under. I didn't even remember what was up, but he just destroyed Royal Troon. But again, the weather probably allowed for that. I don't remember exactly. So what you can see here is that just give you some background on, who's done well in these in the past. And I didn't go through and highlight Terrell Hatton was doing good at the Scottish, and I think he fell apart on Saturday, if I remember correctly. Molinari pops up here again. Of course, Westwood is always live. Spieth, Louis, Rose. Fitzpatrick was having a really good outing at the Scottish Open. Again, I don't know. I haven't looked at it today. But he was, I think, up there top 3 last I looked. You see Rose again. I think Garcia is interesting. He can hit the shots as, of course, the putter, which would kind of default what I was stating. EVR, Eric Van Rooyen, for some reason, does typically pretty well at the Open. You got Danny Willett that popped up a couple times, and he's shown some life. If I remember correctly, I think what did he have? He had surgery. I can't think of what it was. It was something kind of minor. I mean, he had to be cut open, but I can't think off the top of my head what it was. Neither here or there. Jordan Spieth pops up. I think Haotong Li, I think this is interesting. He kind of came out of the scene and thought he was going to be something, and he's kind of fallen apart for the last couple of years. RCB, great iron player. Of course, Brooks always shows up here. Brendan Grace, again, interesting. Terrell Hatton pops up. I mean, just a great links course player. Of course, played a lot of golf. You got Griot that played a little bit on the Challenger Tour. Of course, Brooks Koepka played over in Europe before making it on the PGA Tour for a bit. You got Ryan Palmer, who had a really good, I think, Thursday at the Scottish Open. Came out with like 6 or 7 under after like 10 holes. And again, a Texas player, so someone to be interested. Of course, Spieth, Texas player. Snedeker, it could be an interesting play. Of course, pricing has been out, and it might have been even in the model I showed before. But there's some, I think the most interesting is Sam Burns. I think it's like 6,300. I think that's pretty interesting. I think Daniel Berger is also really cheap. I can't remember off the top of my head. So that gives you just some ideas on the last 4 Opens of some names, and these are the top 20 guys. So the one thing I think I feel like I cannot provide you guys as much value as I typically do, but the one thing I think is valuable is if you look over the last 12 rounds it was super windy, right? So this would be, think about, oh boy, I'm blanking. So it had been at Jack's place at Murfield, not the recent, but the previous year that Rahm won, I believe. I'm kind of getting sidetracked in my brain, but there's certain at the Honda, there was a couple days, like it's going to pull the windiest days. And so that could be over the last 2 or 3 years, and then see who had the best, total stroke gain. And that's what I'm looking at here. This is not my model. This is looking tee to green, ball striking, short game off the tee approach, blah, 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 blah. And the number one guy that comes up over the last 12 times has been super windy. And really, these are a lot of the guys that I'm kind of interested in. I'm interested in Matt Jones, of course, from Australia. Did really, won the Honda Classic. There was some weather during that. Let me see here. Who else? Abraham Answer could be interesting. Very, keeps it in play. Of course, Rose pops up again. Scotty Scheffler, someone that I'm going to be interested in. Tommy Fleetwood, who didn't have a bad Thursday at the Scottish and then kind of fell apart a little bit. Gary Woodland, it's all coming down to what Gary Woodland's short game and putter is going to do, but he can hit, the stingers. He can hit the shots. Yeah, so I would look at these names when you were building. I don't know about Will Z. I think that's interesting. I know, I think he's been struggling a little bit. And then at the Scottish, I think he had a good third round, but he didn't do much the first 2 rounds. Don't quote me on it. It might have been Friday or Saturday. But yeah, so I'll be interested where he ends up at the Scottish. Again, not that we could take everything from that. I think that's a bit of an easier course that they're playing at the Renaissance. But yeah, just give you an idea. When it is super windy conditions, these are the top 20 guys over the past 12 rounds. And you're going to see guys with 7s. That just means they haven't played in enough super windy days. But the rest of the guys that have 12 rounds in it, you get an idea. And then as I always do, I can pull up over the last 24 rounds for you guys, who's the best putters on bent grass. Again, 95% sure that Royal St. George's is a bent green. But there is a chance. I also even saw there was some kind of hybrid seed out there that they switched to help with the dry out. It's getting so dry there to keep the greens from dying. So that could be also another reason why, for whatever reason, I just haven't seen anything at all everywhere I've looked that says these are going to be bent greens. But every course they played over there in over the Opens have all been bent greens, so I'm going to stick with that. Anyways, your number 1 guy, Brent Todd, of course, Jason Kokrak, an interesting person, especially from this price, $7,200. The problem is we all know what he struggles with, and that's getting out of sand bunkers. So got to make a call there. Of course, Zach Johnson, who won, I believe, I'm trying to think here. That was at St. Andrews. That was about, 5-6 years ago. Ian Poulter, kind of interesting. Adam Scott, I think is going to be, very low owned. Should be a great fit, but he's actually flipped where he does well, right? He's usually solid tee to green, and the putter has been the question. Lately, he's been putting really well, which hence this number shows. But tee to green has just been a disaster. Not a disaster, but not what he's used to. Cameron Smith, who's not had a good success record at the Open, I really like. Of course, again, an Australian. Even Leishman, of course, that they won the Zurich. Fitzpatrick, I think, will be pretty interesting. I think Lucas Herbert. So, anyways, Snedeker. These are all guys that, not all of them, but some that I'll be targeting when I start making my builds and giving you guys my picks. Okay, that's it. Like I said, not as much detail as I usually get to go into because it's just not there, but I think enough to get your mind start spinning. And all of you that are probably listening to this have watched many Opens and really know how these things play. It's all going to come down to hot putter, people keeping in the fairway and hitting the iron shots, in a great short game, a little creativity, and should be fine. So again, please like and share this with anybody else that you think might like it. If you've not subscribed, of course, subscribe. Get notified of the 3 shows that come out each week. And, of course, to also enter into the $100 Million Maker contest. 5 people will be winning that, and I will be telling you who that is on this Wednesday. And if I can help you with anything, hit me up on YouTube comments or on Twitter at DFS Golf Guru. And, of course, if you do subscribe, you got to tell me who you think is going to win the Open. All right. The best to you guys. And, last but not least, I did not talk at all about the John Deere, really. I'm just going to throw this in really quick at the end. So I had a little excerpt on Sebastian Munoz. Of course, I picked him to be a first-round leader, 70-1. Of course, I hit that. And I hope you guys also maybe took my advice, which I understand if you didn't, because picking first-round leaders is very difficult. But funny enough, I've hit Sadoshi Kadire. I've hit Munoz. I've hit a couple recently. But long story short, I'm going to play this little excerpt that I talked about. I thought it was just kind of humorous when we were looking at who to roster from the value play side. And, Ryan Moore, there's a differentiation point right there at 3.5%. Someone that you might want to think about if you're trying to differentiate. Sebastian Munoz at 5%. Again, somebody that you might want to look at. I mean, tell me that, Sebastian Munoz won at Sanderson Farms, I think, a year ago? If if you put the pedigree, also, let's go take a look. You know, I just want to talk about Sebastian. Now that we're there, let's go talk a little bit about Sebastian Munoz. Gains on bent. And if we look at, he had a third at Charles Schwab. I think people forget that. Yeah, it was a lot done with the putter. But, you know, these 3 miscuts kind of threw people off. But if you go back to the Zozo and the CJ Cup, now this is elite no-cut fields of the best, pretty much the best 80, I think about 80 players, if I remember correctly, 78 to 80. He came in 9th and 14th against those fields. So all I'm stating is if you're going to roster, you know, a Zach Johnson who costs more, or a Hank Laboda, or Ryan Moore, or Doc Redman, I'm sorry, but Sebastian Munoz is a better player, hands down. So I'm just giving you that little tidbit. You know, there is no reason now. You know, a couple miscuts, I get it, but for 8,100 in this crap field, I'd rather put Sebastian Munoz in play. So talking about Munoz, and then I'll leave you with that, and then that's it. All right, guys, take care.